Welcome to the Profile Corner. This is the 13th video in the Introduction to Woodworking Routers series. This video is about using jigs to create half-blind dovetails. I want to say something really quickly here at the start. Roughly 2 weeks ago, PantoRouter released their half-blind dovetail solution for the PantoRouter after several years of development. If you don't already have a jig that helps you produce half-blind dovetails, and the cost of the PantoRouter is not out of question for you, you may consider buying a PantoRouter and their half-blind dovetail solution because it does some really neat things that you simply cannot do with a half-blind dovetail jig. And so I want to show you a couple of things related to that half-blind solution for the PantoRouter. It uses templates that are kind of small looking, and it comes with a set of 8 of these, and you space them out however you'd like, and then you're able to create a half-blind dovetail using a wide variety of different dovetail bits. I have an example of some of the different dovetail bits that you can use with their set. Some of these I was not able to create a half-blind dovetail joint successfully. However, there may be some solutions for that coming up soon. But this is just a small example. You can read here the white side model numbers of the different size dovetail bits that I own. And there were some bits that it did not support, but there may be a way to actually use those bits for different purposes with their jig. And it's quite possible that PantoRouter will come out with a different sized template that allows you to use some of these very small dovetail bits, as well as to better use this large dovetail bit. I'll insert a picture of some of those different types of joints that I was able to create using the PantoRouter half-blind dovetail solution. I have a couple examples here of some that I created. We'll be talking more about the PantoRouter half-blind dovetail solution in a later video. I just want to give you a real brief introduction here. This is an example of a joint that was nearly ready to go, although I needed to make some small adjustments to it so that this would sit flush with the surface here. This would be like the front of a drawer, and you can see here the drawer sides are kind of thin. But not only can you do that, you can also do something a little bit different. This is using one of the other dovetail bits, not the standard one. I believe this was a 3/8 inch diameter dovetail bit, and you can kind of see there how the joint is put together and some of the variety that you can do. This is a 1/2 inch thick stock for the board that's simulating the side, and a 1/2 inch thick stock for the board that's simulating the front. But this was actually turned into just a regular box instead of a drawer. Here's a couple more examples of some of the more extreme things that you can do with it. Normally the PantoRouter jig is limited to creating half-line dovetail joints no more than roughly 8.5 inches. But there's actually a way that you can actually do it much larger than that. I believe this is about 10 inches in height. And I was able to create this joint without too much of a problem. The upper limit of the PantoRouter solution is a joint that's about 17 inches in height. And as you can see with this one, I ran into some issues. I had some alignment problems here when I was using the pre-production version of the half-line dovetail solution. I'm hoping to get the production version soon, and I'll be able to see if I'm able to create a joint that's 17 inches tall using the half-line dovetail solution. And one of the neat things about it is that you don't have to have a consistent spacing between the dovetails as you would have to have with a jig that's producing these half-line dovetails in a single pass. I'll swing the camera down to give you a better view of what's in front of me. I have two different old Porter Cable Omnijigs that are here on the table. One of them is an 18-inch wide Porter Cable 5116 dovetail jig that was probably close to, I would say, 35 or 36 years old. And then the one that's in front of me is a 24-inch wide 7116 dovetail jig. And as I said, I'll pan the camera down in just a moment to give you a shot of these. You can still sometimes find these on eBay. I picked up this 24-inch wide half-line dovetail solution last year, and it also included a jig that allows creating variable spaced through dovetails. And this was kind of a rare template that comes along with this unit that I picked up. The unit that I picked up actually shipped from Canada. I won it in an eBay auction, and according to my notes here, I paid $343.49, including shipping from Canada, to get this last year. And I was rather fortunate to find it because I haven't been able to find another one that's been in as good a shape as this up until that point. Looking through the current eBay listings, there is one for sale today that is out on eBay. It includes the regular half-line dovetail template that I've got here, this template, and also a template for creating box joints. That one is listed right now for $700 on eBay plus $150 in shipping. So these old jigs are quite valuable still because they're built like a tank. They're built quite heavily, and they're made to last 35 years. So as I said, I'll pan the camera down to give you a better look in just a moment. There are other jigs out on the market. Obviously, the old Omnijig 5116, which I mentioned that I've got over here on the side, which is an 18-inch. I saw that there's one that sold on eBay a couple of days ago. It had 7 templates with it, and that sold for $480 plus $117 in shipping. There's one that's listed in excellent condition right now on eBay for $325 plus $27 shipping and tax. Usually, those 16-inch models are closer to $200 on eBay, and the 24-inch models, they may be in rather rough shape, but they're usually up around $250. So if you're interested in one like what I've got here in front of me, you may be able to find one by searching through eBay. Okay, I'm going to pan the camera down so you can take a look at what's in front of me. Okay, this Porter Cable 5116 dovetail jig, which is over here on the side, that's set up for allowing you to create dovetail joints that are up to 16 inches wide. And this model here is 24-inch wide, is the maximum width of a dovetail joint that it can produce. These jigs are designed to create dovetails that are spaced 7/8 inch apart. So in other words, every 7/8 of an inch, you're going to have a dovetail, a spacer, another, and then you start out with another dovetail. So what that means is that if you're trying to build drawers that look nice, that have a half pin at the top and the bottom of the dovetail joint, you actually have to build drawers in increments of 7/8 of an inch to make the drawer look nice. So in other words, you've got to have a drawer that's 1 3/4 inch tall, 2 5/8 inch tall, 3 1/2 inches tall, 4 3/8, 5 1/4, 6 1/8, 7, 7 1/8, 8 3/4, 9 5/8, 10 1/2, 11 3/8, 12 1/4, or 13 1/8 inch tall sides in order for it to look nice. And of course, you can keep on going, adding on 7/8 of an inch. So the next size up would be 14 inches, and so on. These dovetail jigs, using the standard template, which I've got here, they're designed to work with a 14-degree, half-inch wide dovetail bit. There you can see this is a white side model. This white side model is a 1455 that has a half-inch shank. They also make one that has a 1/4 inch shank. And once you get the router set up, because of how long it takes to set up these jigs, you'd want to dedicate a router for just creating half-blind dovetails. When I first set up this 5116 dovetail jig, it probably took me 5 hours to get a good dovetail joint out of it, because I had to keep experimenting. I found a good video on the internet, on YouTube, that was originally created in 1989, and it was transferred from VHS tape into digital form. And that video really helped out a lot. However, there's some issues in terms of how far this router bit has to stick out from the end of the router base, that it wasn't clear from the video, and it looked like he was measuring from the bottom of this guide bushing and giving off a measurement, whereas instead he should have been measuring off the base to say that, okay, that router bit has to stick out 19/32 of an inch for this joint to come out looking perfect. And that's one of the things I missed. And I believe in the video he actually gave out the wrong dimension, but somebody had put into the comments of that video when they posted it the actual measurement that it needs to be, which is 19/32. So it took about 5 hours for me to get a good joint out of this 5116 dovetail jig. And one of the issues that I had was that the radial arm saw that I was using to cut the boards to length, it had a problem where if you held the board on the right of the blade where it comes forward, it would actually give you a square cut. But if you held the board to the left of the blade, it would actually cut off 90 degrees. And I don't know how many boards I went through in this jig before I realized that, hey, I got a problem here. I'm not getting square 90-degree cuts out of this radial arm saw, and it's throwing off quite a few of my joints. And once I figured that out, it was pretty easy to start working the way through, okay, where does this need to be positioned relative to the front, and how high does it need to be, and things of that sort. But it did take quite a while. When I got this one set up, which took about 5 hours, and then I bought this one last year, it took maybe 2 hours to get this one set up and running, and that was setting up another router to work with this jig. And I was able to take some of the measurements off of this other jig over here in terms of where the rulers on the sides need to be placed. But then I found that the ruler measurements actually have to be different on this 24-inch wide jig, and that caused me some issues. Porter Cable no longer makes large jigs like these. That they did make a 24-inch wide Omnijig. I believe that was in the 2000s, early 2000s, and unfortunately they made a lot of changes to it from the original design, and it became quite complicated to use. However, it did have some nice blocks for setting up the joints so that it didn't take quite so long to figure out exactly how deep this router bit needs to be to cut accurately. So Porter Cable is no longer making the very large jigs. Black & Decker, which owns Porter Cable, they've essentially relegated it to the consumer grade products. And so they do still offer 12-inch wide dovetail jigs. There's a Porter Cable 4210, 4212, and 4216 that are available through Amazon for $160 to $200. I would recommend that you review the reviews that are attached to those. Some people are saying that there's too much flex in the jig to produce an accurate cut. There's some other people in the reviews that give potential solutions to those problems. So if you're interested in getting an inexpensive dovetail jig, that may be an option for you if you can't find one of these more robust industrial grade dovetail jigs. You'll probably find that the cheaper Porter Cable 4210, 4212, or 4216 has integrated setup blocks to help you set up the router more quickly. So that may actually be a benefit to you. Of course, all these solutions are rather primitive compared to the solution that's offered for the PantoRouter. That solution might take 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to set up for a joint at the most. As a matter of fact, when I was going through and I was setting up various different joints for different dovetail bits, it would take me no more than 5 minutes per unique dovetail bit geometry to set up so that I was getting a good joint cut with that bit. So the PantoRouter solution is really quite optimal if you can live within its somewhat limited volume in terms of the maximum width that it can handle, which is comfortably up to about 10 inches. And you could do larger than that, but it's very difficult to clamp the board down to the table when it gets to be that large. Okay, so let's go through a couple more things that's specific to these dovetail jigs. Okay, so the router bit needs to extend out of the base 19/32. You're going to use a 5/8 inch guide bushing. This guide bushing is actually a Milwaukee brand guide bushing that I've got in here. In the other router that I've got set up, it came with original Porter Cable guide bushing for one of these dovetail jigs. When you're making your first pass, you're actually going to do a climb cut with a router, and I'll show you that in a couple minutes. You'll do a climb cut across the face, and what that'll do is that'll give you a very clean cut so that you're less likely to have split out. You'll want to make sure that you wax the top surface of the template as well as the bottom surface of your router so that you make sure that it's smooth. And you can use Johnson's Paste Wax, which is off the market now, or this bowling alley wax also works pretty well. I've already waxed these surfaces so that they're nice and smooth. You want to make sure that after you've completed the cut of this, that you don't just lift the router up, because you'll end up destroying the template, potentially. And you also want to make sure that the router bit has come to a complete stop so that you can pull the router out away from the template. When you're routing, and by the way, here's a couple examples of different joints that were created using these two jigs, and they look pretty nice. They're probably not perfect, but you want to make sure that the bottom side of the drawer, which is this side right here, this is the bottom with a half pin on it, that side is always put toward the ruler or the stop point on this jig. So in other words, when you're cutting the left side of the drawer, if you're looking at it from the front, this would be the left side. The left side gets cut on the left side, and the right side gets cut on the right side of the jig. And the reason for doing it that way is so that you're able to hide the bottom groove for the drawer bottom inside this this final dovetail that's right here. So you would hide it in that dovetail, and it would be hidden on the front board here in that little slot right there, and so you would never actually see it. Okay, so those are a couple of the different things that you can do when you're using these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up to create a small drawer using this system. Give me just a moment to move a couple things out of the way, and then we'll get started. I have the boards for a drawer laid out here. This is the front of the drawer, the back of the drawer, left side of the drawer, and the right side of the drawer. I've marked into the center of each of these left, right, front, and back. This is actually the inside of the drawer. So what I've done is I've drawn in a pencil line to indicate roughly where the drawer bottom will be located, and that'll be a signal to me that this is the side that needs to be positioned against the stop on the jig when we're going to make the cuts. So I've got the front here. What I'm trying to do is to create a drawer that measures a finished size of 11 inches wide by 14 inches long. For this side to come out so that it ends up being 14 inches long, I actually have to cut this board 7/8 of an inch shorter than that. So this board is cut 13 1/8 inches long for a 14-inch deep drawer. I've cut these boards so that they're a multiple of 7/8 inches wide, and so I've chosen to make these 4 3/8 inch tall so that the 7/8 inch spacing of this jig will actually produce a half pin at the top of the drawer and also at the bottom of the drawer. The left side of the front and the left side of the side will actually get positioned over here at the left of the jig. The front and the right side board will get positioned at the right side stop on the jig. I'll reposition the camera so that you've got a better view of the cutting action, and then we'll bring the camera back so you can see what's going on. I'll start at the left side of the jig. I've already got the jig set up. It wasn't long ago that I created the drawers for the PantoRouter cart using this jig. I'll insert a quick video clip that shows you those drawers to see what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to take the left side of the drawer and I'm going to position that on the left side of the jig. Here's the stop right here. And I'll bring this up from the bottom so that it almost touches the template here. I don't quite want it to touch yet. Okay, so now I need to bring in the left side of the drawer front, and I'm also going to position the bottom of the drawer here, like I did on this one, so that it's against the stop. I don't have this one against the stop yet, but I'll fix that in just a moment. Okay, so I'm bringing this one in so that it touches the sideboard. And make sure that it's in there good. I have some self-sticking sandpaper on the bottom of this to hopefully keep it from spinning when we're cutting. Okay, so let's move that in, and this is not gripped in there tightly. So let's get it gripped in there tightly. Okay, you got to make sure it's against this stop over here before you tighten down the clamp. Okay, so now that's in there tightly. So now I can bring the sideboard up so that it touches the template here, and it also touches the stop that's set over here on the side. Okay, so now that's set, and this is flush on the top. That's very important, and it looks like this board back here was either not cut straight or I don't have this in quite straight enough. So I'm going to try to reset this. And that's looking a little bit better. Clamp went down as tight as you can go with it without breaking anything. Okay, so we've got that set. There's still a little bit of a gap here, which is a little bit concerning to me. Okay, so now we've got it flush and there's no gap here, which is great. So now we're ready to do the cut. Once again, we'll do a climb cut first across the face of this, and then we'll come back and then we'll start plunging in to cut out all these half lines. To come to a stop before taking it out of the jig. Okay, so there's the first half line dovetail cut, and we can take this out of the jig. It stayed in position, which is great. And here's what the two pieces look like. And they should just slide together real easy, just like so. Now this is actually set up for a very tight joint, so I'll probably have to hammer that together to get it to go in. But that should be a nice tight fit, which is what you want. And we've got a half dovetail pin on the top and on the bottom, just like we wanted. And of course this is the top of the joint here. And the bottom will be cut into this slot right here, so it'll be hidden in this little cutout right here. So the bottom will not, so that the groove for the bottom will not be visible. Okay, so we should put this back onto the table in the correct position. This is the front board, and we just did the left side, so now that's been cut. Left here. Okay, so now we want to bring up the right board. This is the right side. Here's the bottom of the drawer. So this goes over to where the stop is set, right here. And I'm going to bring it up. And I don't want it to quite touch the template. I want it to get close, but not touch. Okay, so I've got that roughly in position, and it's just barely under the template, which is where we want it to be. And then I'll bring over the front right side, and I'll put the bottom of the drawer against the stop that's over here. And one problem that I've had with this particular jig is that on this side of the jig, this board has a tendency, this top board has a tendency to rotate slightly. I've tried to tighten it down just recently here, and we'll see if that actually makes a difference. And hopefully it doesn't move. And if it does move, we'll end up ruining this board. And then what I'll have to do is I'll have to probably add another clamp on the back side here to make it work. Okay, so that's not sitting flush for some reason, but that's to be expected right now. So we'll bring this back, tighten it down as far as I can go with it, and loosen up the front clamp here. And bring it up so that it touches the template and it's touching the stop over at the side. Okay, so that looks like it's matching up real well. There's no gap in here. And this is flush on the top, which is exactly what we want. So now we're ready to put on our safety glasses and hearing protection and do this other cut. And normally when I'm cutting these, I actually pull up a chair and I sit right in front of the jig, and I can make cuts really easy. Obviously I can't do that with the camera position where it's at, but we can work around that. Notice I'm getting a little bit of tip out here. Do it a second time just to make sure I didn't miss anything. We'll wait for it to come to a stop. Okay, so there's the cut joint, and this is still tight in here. I was concerned that this top board was going to rotate, and fortunately it did not. Okay, so here's the joint for the right side of the drawer. And as you can see there, it's going together just as tight as the left side was going together, which is exactly what we want. Of course, we've got to have room for the glue, and I think that should just barely allow enough room for glue. So we should be in real good shape, and it's flush here as well as at the top. So that's good. That's what we want. And now the front of the drawer is complete. So now we can go to work on the back of the drawer. So I'll put the front of the drawer back into the correct position. The right side of the drawer back into the correct position. And now here's where it gets potentially a little confusing. Okay, we're going to take the right side and then the back. And instead of going to the right of the jig, as the right would indicate here, for the back side of the drawer, we actually have to do the opposites. So the right side goes on this side here when we're doing it. Okay, so this is the right side of the drawer. So that comes up through the bottom. So that it almost touches the jig template. Lock it down. And then the back here. Okay, so there's the bottom of the drawer. Gotta make sure that I've got this correct on here also. Okay, here's the bottom of the drawer. I've got it marked on there where it's at. So that goes up into here. And I've got marked on there that this is matching up with the right side. So now we've got that correct. So that comes all the way forward into the jig and then against the stop. Okay, now I can work on this front board, put it into position. Okay, this is flush across the top, which is what we want. And now we're ready to cut the back right side of the drawer. So I'll make a climb cut going across first, and then I'll cut the slots. Okay, that joint is done. I didn't go back through it a second time in the opposite direction. That's really not necessary all the time. So now this right side is complete. And then we just need to take this back here. Take this back. And now we pick up the other pieces. This is the left side of the drawer. And to do the back of the left side of the drawer, we go to the right side of the jig. So we'll bring this up. So that it almost touches the template up here. Okay, here's the side that matches up with it. So here's the back side that matches up with this side of the drawer. Okay, now I've got to make sure that the side of the drawer, which is in front here, is in the correct position. Okay, it is. Got that tightened down. This feels flush going across the top, which is exactly what we want. So now we're ready to do the climb cut across the face. Okay, so now the drawer is complete, and you can see here just how quickly that joint was actually cut. This is the commercial version of the Porter Cable jig, and the commercial version holds its tolerances very, very well. And so that's one of the big advantages of this over the cheap jigs that are in the $160 to $200 range. So now I can take this board out. And the side is complete now, and so is the back. So now with any luck, we can put this together, possibly with a little bit of assistance with a mallet. Okay, so here's the parts of the drawer. This is the front, the back, left, and right. And now we're ready to assemble it. So we'll take these two pieces and put them together the correct way. That was backwards. Here's the right way to put it together. And now you can see it matches up like it should. Okay, so it sticks out just a little bit. May need to fine tune that ever so slightly. So there's the side. Okay, now we'll do the back. Okay, the back went together well. Now for the right side. Okay, so there's the completed drawer. Let's see if it measures the correct dimensions. 11 inches, and this was supposed to be 14 inches, and it's a 32nd oversize. So you may have to adjust accordingly. And it looks good. It is flushing up, just like it should. This one's gone a little bit over. Okay, so let's bring it over to the camera so that you can see the result. That's what a perfect half-blind dovetail looks like, made using the Porter Cable jig. This here, I should pull this out ever so slightly, and that'll be flush right there. The other side. Okay, this is a perfect joint, and this is a perfect joint. So it takes a while to set these up, but they do a beautiful job once they're set up, especially the heavy-duty commercial ones like the 7116, which is here, and the 5116, which is over on the other side there. The less expensive jigs may not produce as good a result as this did. So just be a little bit forewarned about that. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.